Hey there, this is Alfie Whattam, London's tech recruiter and the host of the London Technology Podcast. Today I'm joined by Karl. Thanks for joining us. Could you guys tell us a little about yourself?
Thank you, Alfie. I'm Karl Schulenburg. I'm the co-founder and the technology director for Reason, which is a full stack digital product agency in London, operating out of Shoreditch. I come from a few different sectors, and so before this, I was a director at UBS, and I was mobilizing a lot of their business functions within this NEO program, so doing things like FX trading and research, all on mobile devices. And then before that, I had a team at Burberry responsible for their digital innovation programs and initiatives. And so I do come from a very heavy development and engineering background, and I've kind of moved into more program management and then program director type functions.
Awesome. So you've been in the industry for a while. What advice would you have for IT, graduates, junior developers, that sort of thing, that are just sort of starting out, early on in their careers?
Yeah, so we there's probably two different approaches for this. If you're a graduate looking for your position, there's a whole range of companies out there who do just kind of like look at the figures and look at the stats on how you went through your education. And at places like banks, like at UBS, we'd look at that, and then we'd handpick a pool of graduates. And so if you perform well at school, you will get picked up, and they have very strong training development programs. But I do have to say the strongest engineers that I've worked with or that we've recruited haven't necessarily been graduates even, but they have just people who spent the time, have a passion for tech, and they've gone and learnt the fundamentals, and they've shown that ingenuity. And they're the people who really do love doing what they're doing. And so anyone who has a focus, like tech is quite a broad, there's a broad gamut of, opportunities within that environment. And if you try and hit everything, you're gonna get lost very quickly, So there's some key areas that people should be looking into, and like just some of the fundamentals, setting up your environments, learning some source control, things like that, just help you get you running in your RDEs. And then also pick an area of expertise. Do you want to be doing APIs and backend? Do you want to focus on front end HTML? Do you want to be doing mobile apps? Like kind of learn something well, And that's going to teach you how to learn, because once you know one language very well, it's very easy to take some of those concepts and move to another language, right? But if you spread yourself thin, then you're polluting your knowledge waters like up front, right?
Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially around being, more sort of T-shaped rather than a generalist, being a specialist, focusing on a particular area, becoming an expert in that field. But if you try and do everything, you'll be, the old expression is the jack of all trades is the master of none. And it's sort of definitely.
That's right. And you can get to that, but it's not good to start like that, I don't think. I think in the future, you will hit many elements of architecture and development and delivery and all that. And then you will get experience in those areas. But up front, you need to build that baseline, right? And to do that, have some focus. Also, if you could find a company that has a really strong training program as well and development program in your career, like some companies really just want the bandwidth of people to do the execution, right, which are the engineers. But other companies will really look at the investment in these people, right? And if they're giving you the time to grow and have a collaborative environment, you're going to learn a lot from your peers, right? And so be very, listen to everything and be quite onto what your training progression would look like, and make sure you've got a company which can help support you with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brilliant. So if you were to look into the future, Karl, are there any sort of technologies which get you excited, that you're passionate about, which you think will have a big impact on the future ahead?
There's technology, and there's an architectural pattern called serverless design, which is essentially function as a service. And it's not brand new. This has been out for a few years, but slowly more and more products are moving in that direction, right? And there is kind of a blurred line between a platform as a service like a Heroku and infrastructure as a service, which are things like AWS and Azure. And what they've done on AWS and Azure is provided these compute modules which can auto scale for you. So if you're developing an API, you can develop it in a Lambda function. And that is essentially what serverless architecture is. And the reason why that is exciting is because the investment in making a product that can scale to your millions of users, if it's successful, is a lot less than if you're going to do it in a traditional way and set up scaling yourself and configuring your own hardware, right? So that barrier to entry to compete with larger businesses is shrinking, right? So that's why it is quite interesting. That's why a lot of companies use it to try and validate ideas. You know, it kind of helps get your products out quickly, and then also the pricing model around that makes it quite effective just to run your projects, even if it's been running for 5-10 years. You know, there's no reason to actually have to configure your own hardware. And so what the cloud providers have done, they've black boxed that execution and the black box the configuration of hardware to say, you don't have to worry about that anymore. We'll take care of it. You focus on your application design, which I think is changing a lot of things. I could list a whole bunch more techs that I'm interested in. I think that is going to make a big positive shift. People are starting to realize the value of data and ML and getting, you know, good. It's not just insights, it's also being proactive on the data. And so traditionally, you look at big data and it'd be quite retrospective in saying, what does this tell me about my business in the past? But now with ML techniques, you could look at your historical data and say, how does that data in the past inform what we predict in the future? And that's kind of where it is moving towards. Like, a lot of these techniques are being used to provide active value instead of a retrospective analysis for then people to say what they should be doing, you know? And so there is kind of a shift happening in how much value we can get from tech and digital.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, serverless is definitely the future, and you make a very good point around data. The thing that I find with data, especially at big companies, is that they're sort of swimming in it, but they don't really know what to do. Rather than using it to just measure previous things, use it to predict the future, like you said, and guide the business based on that. Brilliant. Well, Karl, thank you so much for your time. It was good to get your sort of ideas and insights and that sort of thing. I'll tag you on LinkedIn so people and for your time, and you to everybody for watching as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Alfie. Cheers.